Wanted to say, okay, great. That if people would mute yourself during the presentation. So welcome everyone. My name's Betty Trainer and I'm here in San Francisco. And so great to see so many people. And I think there'll be more coming through in the next few minutes to learn more about PFASs, the forever chemicals. Tonight's presentation is part of the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, WILF, San Francisco and East Bay branches Peace Talk series that we started about 5 years ago. As many of you may know, WILF is the oldest women's international peace and justice organization. It was started in 1915 with many women who wanted to end World War I, and one of the leaders here in the US was Jane Addams. And we're still going strong after all these years, both internationally and many countries throughout the world, with a new surge in Africa, as well as nationally in the US. We have over 50 branches, and including our own local branches here in Northern California. With tonight's presentation by Marguerite Edelman, we hope to launch WILF's PFAS in California program. So now I'd like to introduce Marguerite. Marguerite Edelman, a Winooski, Vermont resident, is a retired nonprofit administrator. Marguerite served as the coordinator of the Vermont PFAS Coalition, a project of the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom in Burlington, and WILF's U.S. Earth Democracy Committee. As a retired administrator in education, nonprofits, and government, she has won many state and national awards for the educational programs that she has developed. The PFAS educational program is her way of paying it forward, educating community members on a complex topic so that they can protect themselves and future generations. So Marguerite, I'll give it to you now.
Betty, thank you so much for that introduction. I really, really appreciate it. I'm going to start sharing my screen now, if that's okay with everyone. Here it comes. And I just want to let you know a few things. First, I want you to know I'm not an expert in PFAS and in the sciences. My degrees were quite different. But I've been studying this issue now for 4 years, and I feel like finally I can share the complexity of this issue with others and help them really get the tools that they need to learn more about PFAS in their state, in their community, and how they can protect themselves and their families as best as possible from these very toxic chemicals. This particular program tonight is tailored to the San Francisco Bay Area in California. However, what I'm going to be showing everyone is actually applicable to anywhere in the US. The tools can all be used, and you'll see that in a few minutes, to research your area and your community and learn about PFAS and how you can find out more about it in your community. I'm glad people have muted their computers, and you can choose the speaker view if you want. That's one way to do this. And you can also just choose one screen. So if you mute your computers, I think that might help too. I want you to know that the address down here at the bottom of the screen, pfasinfo@wilfus.org, is the one that you can use to send me if you would like a copy of this PowerPoint, or if you want a copy of it as a PDF. I will make this available to anyone, and when I have the link for the recording, I'll also make that available. Finally, I just want to say before we go into the presentation that what we're learning about PFAS is evolving. The truth is that, we really don't have all the information we need yet. It's only come into the public view within the last 3 years or so. When I first started, I would say PFAS and no one knew what I was talking about. So things have gotten better over time. So I'm going to start the presentation by first just telling you what PFAS are. Okay, PFAS are a chemical class of chemicals. So we have the tree here on the left that has just a few of the 12,000 plus man-made toxic chemicals that are really used in a variety of products. They're just in everything today. And that's one reason why it's such an important topic. Most people don't know that PFAS was actually invented in the Manhattan Project when they were working on the nuclear bomb. And we've known about the dangers of PFAS for well over 50 years at this point in time. So PFAS, when I started working on this 4 years ago, they said there were only 6,000 forms of it, but they keep manipulating the molecules. And now this says 12,000, but the last number I read was 14,000 forms of PFAS, which I find really shocking. PFAS are bio-accumulative. That means that they keep building up in living beings, and they travel through air, water, soil, and dust. And we find them in our food now because we're spreading biosludge, which is contaminated with PFAS. The two types of PFAS that most people know about are PFOA and PFOS because they've been phased out of production, but they're legacy chemicals. And because they're forever chemicals and they're persistent, they're non-degradable, and they're toxic in minute amounts, they're legacy chemicals. They're going to be here for a very long time, even if we're not using them like we used to in the past. Instead, what we're doing is we're replacing them with newer forms of PFAS that are just as big a threat to our health and our environment as these legacy forms. And to create PFAS, we create emissions, and those carbon emissions that the plants create contribute to climate change. So I know climate change is the hot topic right now, but we can't forget about the environmental toxins and what they're doing to the climate, as well as to our overall earth environment and our bodies. And I would encourage people to watch the hype. You're going to see a million articles that are going to come out talking about how they can remediate PFAS. The truth is that none of them are proven and none of them are scalable to the point that we need them to be. PFAS has been found in the glaciers. It rains PFAS over the lakes, the Great Lakes. PFAS is everywhere now in the world. And the ability for us to remediate oceans and rivers and air and all of our soil is simply not possible and exceedingly, exceedingly expensive. So why should we be concerned about PFAS? Well, the ill effects of PFAS are frightening. Okay, these chemicals cause a variety of forms of cancer. And just a few of those include testicular cancer, which firefighters are really suffering from. Even their turnout gear, what they wear to fight a fire, has PFAS in it. And that's right next to their body. The firefighting foam that's been used for years contains those legacy PFAS and are highly, highly toxic. Believe it or not, communities used to spray the foam at public community events and let kids run around and swim in it, thinking that this is a fun activity for kids. And that to me is shocking. I found out here in Vermont that happened at a number of large community festivals and events. The fire department would come with their trucks with the PFAS AFF foam in it and spray it out so the kids could run through it. breast cancer, kidney cancer, and brain cancer. There was just articles about professional athletes paying on artificial turf that has PFAS in it. So cancers are definitely something that we could be concerned about, and we're seeing an increase in cancers across the country. So you've got thyroid disease, colitis, high cholesterol, lots of pregnancy-induced problems. Weakened immune systems make our vaccines less effective, which is why COVID might have hit the United States so dramatically. And you see reproductive health problems in both men and women. And I have stories of men, firefighters actually, who have not only low sperm count, but no active sperm, and they and their wife can't have children. Women see a 40% decrease in their reproductive abilities. I mean, we may be heading toward the Handmaid's Tale at this point in time. And learning and developmental disabilities in infants and children. Studies have proven that PFAS is present in almost all Americans' blood, and in many studies in the breast milk of 100% of the women tested. It's even now lately been linked to obesity. So if you're interested in health, one of the newest research tools, and it's not even complete yet because we haven't done a lot of health research into PFAS, but this particular database by Dr. Pelsch is really very wonderful for beginning research on the health effects. And I'm going to start now taking you to some of these sites briefly so you can see what they're about. Okay, hopefully you are now seeing the PFAS toxic database first page. And this will give you an introduction to this particular database and how to use it. If you click over here on database, the page should change now and bring up a kind of complex looking sheet like the one you just saw. Here it is, with on the left-hand side, a number of different forms of PFAS. Across the top, different healthcare problems, and over here, selected studies on those problems. So let's say that if I just wanted to look at studies, and this is the most studies here, 631 on PFNA and other PFAS, and went down to cancer. And if I click on cancer here, it's going to do its work. And over here, it's going to show me studies. For example, the Hardell study that comes up here is on prostate cancer. And it will tell you the different chemicals, PFAS that were measured in that study, and it'll give you conclusions and outcomes. This is the first sort of database that is now finally out there, just in the last year and a half or so, where people can actually go and if they need to prove their case about, prostate or testicular cancer, they can at least have a database where they can find the studies that focus on that particular chemical and on that particular disease. So I'm going to take us back now to the main screen and move on. So this is really healthcare there. So where do PFAS come from? This on the left are maps that are put out by the Environmental Working Group. And the Environmental Working Group has a wonderful website. I'll give you the information on it in the end. Each of these maps is showing something different related to PFAS. But what I like about the graph here is that it really gives you a sense of this cyclical process of how PFAS is just so invasive. So industry produces PFAS and puts it in all kinds of products, which I'll show you in a minute. And those products, those coats, are worn by humans, and they eat the fish and they drink the water, and they wear the makeup that has PFAS in it. And so we get exposed to it, and then it gets transferred to infants through breast milk and cord milk. The industry also sends those PFAS, and these are the biggest users of it, to military bases, to airports, and to firefighting foam. Those consumer products, when when we're ready to throw them out, end up in landfills and sewage treatment plants. By the way, toilet paper contains PFAS. And then they end up, leaching out into the air and the water and the soil. We're only coming to grasp the sickler nature of these horrible, horrible chemicals. So what products contain PFAS? Every day, it seems, I get a Google alert that tells me more products that have PFAS in them. And I want to tell you some words you should look out for when you're out there looking at the products you buy. You should be really aware of words like non-stick, water resistant, stain resistant, grease or oil resistant, and long lasting. These words are big red flags for PFAS. The other thing that's of concern is that in the US, we have something called business confidential. And so businesses don't want to reveal their secret ingredients. If something is not active in your cosmetics, it's not, for example, the thing that colors your lips red, then it will be listed as an inert ingredient. And often inert ingredients are invisible. You don't know what they are. Pesticides, for example, some of them contain 93% inert ingredients. And from what we've been reading recently, a lot of those inert ingredients are PFAS or a form of PFAS that are added and don't need to be added to the product, but we don't know it. We're being contaminated without our consent. So sunscreens, 67% contain PFAS, cosmetics, 48%. The personal care products, dental floss, contact lenses, toilet paper, female hygiene products, tampons and pads, our food, seafood, and some produce like kale and spinach and blueberries contain high amounts of PFAS. Cleaning products, far beyond just floor wax, but that was the one that was obvious. Bug repellents and pesticides. Household and consumer products like rugs, paints, mattresses, and clothing. I'll tell you a little story about cookware and food containers because, maybe even in the 70s, I had heard of Teflon. I didn't know Teflon was PFAS, but Teflon is PFAS. And so when I started doing the research and wanting myself to start buying PFAS-free cookware, I went and I started looking and I realized all the gimmicks that they have. They'll put no PFOA, no PFOS, but that's only 2 forms of the 14,000 forms of PFAS. And those are the legacy forms. So they're not even being used that commonly anymore. So you think you're buying something without PFAS in it, but you really don't know for sure that you are. So you have to be really careful about the gimmicks that you see for advertising. Lots of children's products and our tap water, bottled water. So if you think you're safe by buying bottled water, be careful there. And well water can all contain PFAS. And biosludge, which is used and spread on our fields and probably fields in California as well, since you have quite a large farming industry out there. Are things to be concerned about. Sure. So the EPA, after 20 years, finally came out with new drinking water standards for PFAS. And this was part of the PFAS strategic roadmap. And these are some of the key points from that. And I'll try and explain this to you as best I can. So maximum contaminant level, MCL, for PFOA and PFOS, remember those are legacy PFAS, are now going to be regulated in drinking water at 4 parts per trillion. Now, I got to give you a sense of what this is, what we're talking about. 1 part per trillion is equal to 1 drop in 20 Olympic-sized swimming pools, or a pinch of salt in a ton of potato chips. What is concerning about their standard of 4 parts per trillion is that their actual health advisory level, I'm sorry, their health advisory level, or HAL, is actually below that. It's 0.004 parts per trillion for PFOA and 0.02 parts per trillion for PFOS. In other words, our health is in danger at less than 1 part per trillion, but the EPA is proposing 4 parts per trillion because it's too, we haven't developed the tools to effectively measure below 2 parts per trillion. So they still set it at 4 parts per trillion, despite the fact that we can measure at 2 parts per trillion. And they also set an enforceable limit for 4 additional chemicals. And they're doing what they call a health hazard index, which is a kind of nice approach in that it's looking at the additive effects of multiple PFAS when they occur together. Part of the plan is monitoring those 6, and there are only 6 forms of PFAS that they're looking at, and providing public notifications so you know when PFAS levels are above the standards, and they're requiring treatment for those standards. Now, part of the problem with the EPA's standards, while certainly a step forward after 20 years of no changes in our drinking water standard, is that they're regulating one by one by one. And the European Union, on the other hand, is really regulating or looking at regulating by a class of chemicals. In fact, the European Union proposal is that they're going to call for a ban on 10,000 forms of PFAS, and they have gotten industries across Europe to join with them to promise that they'll stop using PFAS chemicals. So that's a big concern. And I just want to say the EPA's standards wouldn't even go into effect till 2026 or later. And right now they're still, like negotiating possible exceptions to the rules. So while it's a much better standard than it used to be, it's not anywhere where we need to be when we look at the serious nature of these chemicals. So does your drinking water contain PFAS? Well, as of March 2023, the contaminant levels for PFAS in California have not been established. But you do have public notification. If PFOA is above 5.1 parts per trillion and PFOS is above 6.5 parts per trillion. And limited testing in California has already detected 9 PFAS in the drinking water supplies of 16 million people in California. This link, which I'm not going to go to, will give you your water report for your community. When you click on the link, it will ask for your zip code, and then you'll get to choose your community and get to see your water report. Unfortunately, because we haven't been testing for PFAS until more recently, those old water reports will not tell you if you have PFAS. You'll have to call your water facility in your city. But if you find that you have PFAS in your water or in your well water, and you want to know, what you can do about that and how much of a hazard it is to your health, this particular website will give you a tool where you enter in the PFAS that's in your water or in your blood, because they're now blood tests. And it will give you your health index and some suggestions on what you can do to protect yourself. So can you test for PFAS in your own water or in your well? Yes, you can. And none of this is cheap. And we've been contaminated by industries that, you know, have chosen to contaminate us and not tell us that they are. And it's costing us money. The cheapest tests that we've been using here in Vermont are from Cyclopure. They're $79, and that includes the mailing to and from the lab. They also sell water pitchers. I'm not advertising for them, but I haven't found anything cheaper than the $79. However, Cyclopure tests are not certified, despite the fact that comparisons between the certified tests and labs and Cyclopure are almost identical. So the certified testing labs in California can cost anywhere from $350 to $500. And your state health.
It's a little bit too much information coming.
Too much what? I'm sorry.
I think she's not, Martha, maybe you can mute yourself. I think she's not relating. I think it's off topic. So
yeah, this is a lot of information, but I'm going to make the whole program, the whole PowerPoint available to everyone. I really just want to give you the broadest overview I can, so you can choose out the tools that most interest you to do further research on. Anyways, you can find out a lot more about your state here. I put in your state certified labs for California. And remediation. Basically, remediation can be done at the home level as well as, you know, at larger levels, hospitals, cities, all of that. And there are basically three technologies that I list here. Activated carbon absorption, ion exchange resins, and high pressure membranes or reverse osmosis, nanofiltration. If you want to learn more about these, this link here from the EPA will tell you about the various forms of remediation that are available. And I did have someone ask me about what was the cheapest and best system I could find for a home. And so I did a lot of research on that. And the cheapest whole house well system was $1,000 to $1,600. So it's a good thing to know. But if you think about it, a lot of people simply can't afford these solutions. So it's important that we really be looking at legislation so we can protect people. Okay, I'm gonna move on. So water and military contamination with PFAS. This is from the Environmental Working Group, and I'm going to take you to the site just so you can see how it works. Hopefully it'll come up. Okay, I don't know. Here it comes. So I'm sorry, it takes sometimes a minute to load these. The lighter blue here is drinking water that is above the proposed limit. The darker blue is below. Purple are military sites and orange are other known sites. If you go over here, you can enlarge this and move the map so that we can go to the San Francisco Bay Area. So when you click on, let's do a couple of military sites. This one here, it will tell you that this is the Naval Station Treasure Island, that it is contaminated groundwater on base with firefighting foam at 10,750 parts per trillion. And that last test was done in 2017. And I'll show you ways later to get more information on these. The one here is the Naval Station at Alameda. This is, once again, 2017 firefighting foam. Legacy PFAS, PFOS, and PFOA, 336,000 parts per trillion. And I'm going to show you two towns. Okay, Fremont here will give you their latest, the population it serves, the water district, but it'll give you the different forms of PFAS. And I just want to show you the two that the EPA is going to regulate. They're already testing at 6.4. If you remember, the new drinking water standards will be 4.0, when in actuality, they should be, if we go by the health advisory level, they should be less than 1 part per trillion. PFOA is below the 4 parts per trillion, but still above the health advisory. And if we go to San Jose, down here, the total PFAS is 29 parts per trillion. PFOS is at 9.9 currently, and PFOA at 2.7. Once again, one is well above 4 parts per trillion, and both of them are well above the minimal health advisory levels, which should be almost 0. So this is just the beginning of a way to start examining water and military bases. This is just one chart, and I'll show you a number of these that you can access. So I'm going back to the original slide, and we'll move on from this one. And I pulled this up for you in San Francisco Bay because this was a study that was done about water and PFAS in San Francisco Bay. And they looked at 40 PFAS chemicals. They found 11 of the 40 when they collected it in 2021. And that was at 22 sites in the Bay. And they found 7 forms of PFAS, okay? Which is quite a huge number. These 2 forms, PFPEA and PFHXA, were found at the highest concentration across all the sites. Interestingly enough, the EPA water quality standards aren't looking at either one of those, so they're not included. And the 7 dominant PFAS were significantly higher in the South and Lower South Bays. And surprisingly, and I found this really shocking, the study did not consider anything about bioaccumulative effects. And that's especially true for fish and other living organisms. So if you want to see the study, you can actually go to it yourself and download it here. But what it really says is that no fish are safe to eat from the bay. And those individuals who rely on subsistence fishing, in other words, they fish for their food, should be warned. And there should be many more health advisories out about fish. PFAS has been found in seals and cormorants and other native species all around the San Francisco Bay Area. Oh, sorry, I gotta go back. This is industrial sites contaminated with PFAS. You're getting a sense now of, how shocking this is. I'm going to take you to this site. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. So what you see here is some information on the left about the site. But the first thing I want to do is, okay, I'm going to take this out. I'll bring it back up. I want to zero in on California and the San Francisco Bay Area. Okay, and then I'm going to bring the info back up. Hold on, sorry, we need to move it over a little more. Okay, so the graph shows you known users of PFAS, suspected users of PFAS, airports, landfills and waste disposal facilities, and sewage and waste treatment plants. And one of the things that I really found shocking was the number of industries that use PFAS. And this is a list of the variety of industries that use PFAS and that we know very little about how much they're using, how much is being spilled or discarded or put into our wastewater treatment system. So everything from commercial printing, painting and coating manufacturers, car washes, petroleum refineries, soap and detergent manufacturers, textile and fabric finishing mills, paper, and the list goes on. Carpets and rugs. So you get a good sense of what I'm talking about in terms of the variety of places that are dealing with this. So now if we just go back and we decide we want to like hit a few of these, most of these, there aren't too many red ones that you see here, meaning known users of PFAS, but we can go to airports. So I'll just take one, for example, here. Maybe. Okay, so this is the Oakland Airport Terminal. They're a suspected releaser of PFAS, but we don't have a lot of information on it yet. So this is still all evolving, this ability to collect the information that we need so that we can be informed. What I do like about this is, you know, you go to green, let's see if I can get it, and you'll get some, like a commercial printing company here, you know, in San Francisco, or you can hit an orange. Fine. Well, I'll hit a purple here. Okay, so this is Pentagon Technologies in Hayward, and it tells you what they do. And you can look at where you live, you know, get even closer into the map if you want. And you can then see everything that's around you that may be producing toxins and chemicals. And the whole Bay Area is literally filled with those. Some of the biggest and most dramatic numbers are coming from airports, from the military, and waste landfills and wastewater treatment plants. But we don't know a lot yet about industry. And I'll show you a little more about how you can find out about those, because these are all in orange, suspected, likely contaminants of PFAS. I'm going to go back to the original slide. Okay, and that's one source there for looking at industrial contaminants. This next one is absolutely one of my favorite, but the PFAS contamination site tracker is out of Northeastern University in Massachusetts. And this site tracker is only as good as the information that's been input into it. But I'm going to show you California, because California's got a lot added to it. So I'm going to have to do a new share. Okay, and you should at this point be seeing, you know, two large green bars, and you're seeing the database. At the bottom of the database, which might be hard to see down here, it says USA contamination sites. It's an Excel spreadsheet, so there's really two pages, and I'm going to click on the pages that have the sites. And it's all done alphabetically by state. I want to go down to California, if I can get there. Sorry. Okay, so California has a huge number of sites listed. And what I really like about it is that this chart will tell you the site. It will also tell you the industry. It will tell you what's contaminated, the groundwater. It'll tell you the sample date. It'll give you PFOA and PFOS and the two together. But best of all, it will give you links to do research. So if you go across, you can actually hit a lot of links that will tell you a lot. Now, the GeoTrack Water Board's link for California is a wonderful site. And I know we're not going to have time for me to take you there, but they'll give you a lot of information. So I want to just quickly go up to the two airports, San Francisco International Airport. So you've got 12,070 parts per trillion of PFAS, and you can get a lot of information across here, folders with information about the specific proofs and documents for that. And you also have San Jose at 35,053 parts per trillion. There are a lot of military bases. Military bases are probably, with airports, the largest polluters there are. So this is a wonderful site to research and to look at. And California is well represented on this site. I'm going to go back to the slideshow. Okay, so that's the PFAS contamination site tracker. I'm going to skip this one because it's related to the site tracker, but you can also go in. And what's nice about this is that it gives you known contamination sites. And then if you click on a different one, you can get presumed contamination sites. It also gives you community resources, and it gives you states water standards. So it's a little bit different, but a very helpful site itself. And this is a new one. This is actually a pretty amazing site. I haven't totally conquered this site yet, but it is from the EPA, and it's focused on PFAS in particular. So we're going to go to that site. I'm going to do a new share, and this is a complex site, so it might take a minute to come up. Yeah, it's taken a minute to come up, folks, and I'm sorry about that. But let me just tell you that this is probably working to be a comprehensive site, and it covers so many things. I may need to go back, or I may need to close out something. Okay, I'm going to go back and try and click on it again. I'm sorry about this. Okay. I don't know. I may not be able to show you this. Oh, here we go. So when this site comes up, you have to acknowledge the disclaimer before you can see it. And what you're seeing is what we call an integrated map. And you see across the top here, all of these subcategories. We're on the integrated map, but there's a drinking water map of UCMR, a drinking water map for the state, a production map, and I'll explain a little bit about each of these and how to use it. There's a tutorial for this, and I would suggest doing it, but I'm just going to introduce you to it briefly. You go over here where it says state, territory, or tribe, and hit California. And what's going to happen is you're going to zoom in a minute on California, and you can make that larger. You can make that much bigger. And over here will be legends and maps, and it gives you a sense of all the things that you can see. You can see water and tissue, air, soil, sediment, and other. You've got drinking water, you've got state reported drinking water data. And then you have all sorts of Superfund sites and industry sectors, spills, blah, blah, blah. And it goes on and on and on. What I really love about this is that I'm going to skip UCMR because you don't have a lot really good there. But if you just go to drinking water for the state, I just clicked on this one up here. They give you disclaimers all the time. So you have a disclaimer that you can take off the screen. And you can zoom in further if we want to go to the Bay Area. And you can zoom in on the counties. And it's probably hard to see this, but it'll tell you how many PFAS samples they did and how many had detects for PFAS. So this was Contra Costa County. This one is Santa Clara County. And this one, I didn't get the right one. Alameda County. Over here, what you get is summary tables. So you can do samples by contaminants. So you really can space out information. You can download it. You can target the area you want. And then let's say we just want to, let me target one county. I'll target Contra Costa County. In order to do that, you just click the green and it will tell you, it will give you information about the county. You can do samples by contaminant. So uranium is quite high. And then you see a number of different forms of PFAS, the number of samples, and down below, this is really great. It tells you the city, the population served. You can go over and you can pull up a lot more information by area. So that's just one of the tools that you have here. Some of the other tools, I'm going to take you to production. Okay, this includes, I have to go back up. People who make PFAS or import PFAS. I think this is a little low, but here in Oakland, you have Scimitar Corporation in San Francisco. From my research, I saw that they import PFAS. So if we wanted to just see that, we would highlight it. We could then decide what kind of information we want to see. There's not a lot there. Or down here, you can actually go to the Echo Facility Report. And quickly, I'll just show you that. Because Echo gives you a report about the violations, the laws that they may have broken. And this is fairly common. I don't know if you're gonna notice this, that I scroll down, but there are no records returned, no records, no records, no records, no records. We are doing a really crappy job of monitoring what our industries and our businesses are doing. And I find that particularly frightening. I need to go back now, hold on, to back up to the analytic tools here. Environmental media, once again, there'll be a disclaimer. Under environmental media, you'll get a legend, and the legend will show you water. Tissue is usually fish or other wildlife, air, soil, sediment, or other. Let's just say we wanted to look at tissue, and I'm choosing that for a very specific reason. Tissue, and now when we look at the map, let me put the legend back up. You're not going to see a lot of samples of fish tissue. In fact, the only one I looked at was fish tissue in the San Juan I'm probably not saying that right, river at 11,400 parts per trillion in a fish or fish. And there were 13 samples. And over here, you can find out a little more about the species, etc. And you could go down here and actually get the reports. However, I think what we know about fish and seafood is that it bioaccumulates PFAS at remarkably high levels. And a whole lot more needs to be done in California for that. Under discharge monitoring, you don't have a lot of data here either. These are only places, 6 facilities in California that actually report PFAS and PDES releases. You know, I didn't find any in the Bay Area. And I find that hard to believe that there aren't more or that there shouldn't be more. So once again, it's that monitoring. I don't think that we're doing a good job enforcing laws and monitoring. Superfund sites, once again, they're not all here, but you get a good sense. There's only one list open, and that's the Alameda Naval Air Station. Generally, the Air Force has better data than the Army or the Navy. They have a lot better data. And you can get that data here by going down and getting the reports. And these are good things to get because finding data, at least for some of these places, is not very easy. It takes quite a bit of research. Federal sites, you have a lot around the Bay Area. Once again, we might need to zoom in. Okay, but there'll be a legend again. And in the area for the federal sites, you have 5 in the San Francisco Bay Area. You know, one is Navy, and Hunters Point Navy, lots of Navy sites. And for more in-depth reports on those sites, you can go across and get them here. And these reports are very, very helpful. I use them to study our Air Force VTANG, Vermont Air National Guard here. The industry sectors. Once again, we're still focused on California. Hopefully this will come up. You get a really good sense of this. And if you just want to see one sector, you can highlight it and it will be the only one that shows. And then you could go back and take that sector out over here. And all the other sectors will come back in a minute, I hope. And let's say we want to see, I was going to show you, where you can see national defense. You got a lot of sites around there. Petroleum, I was surprised by this. A lot of petroleum sites around the Bay Area. Once again, you can get more information down below. Industry is probably your largest numbers. You know, you're looking at 8,468 active industries that are producing or using PFAS in California, but the actual count is closer to 17,592. And once again, you can go through the ECHO reports, you can find out if they have violations, if they're in economic justice community areas, etc. Okay, transfers. Okay, I got to go through these fast because I can tell this is taking a long time. You guys send your stuff all over the country. That's what this map is showing over here. And you can focus on incineration, which I believe is going to be against the law in California. No incineration of PFAS in your state, but that doesn't stop you from sending it other places. And, you know, this is for Wilf, I think, an economic justice issue. Where are you sending it? Are those communities that we should be sending it to? We discovered here in Vermont that we were transferring our stuff from the Vermont Army National Guard to a poor community outside of Albany to be incinerated right next to low-income housing. So these are things that we should be looking at. Spills, you can track spills. And once again, I find this part down here a little more helpful. 30,000 gallons of AFF firefighting foam at, let's see if we can find out where it was at. Camp Pendleton. And yeah, Camp Pendleton. So, you know, you could read more about that and wonder if it was ever really cleaned up sufficiently. And last but not least, toxic releases. Once again, here, we don't have a lot of information, and I think there should be more, definitely more. I didn't see any in the San Francisco Bay Area. I just think that there's something missing there and more research probably needs to be done. We're going to go back to the main slideshow. Okay, move on. So when I put all that together, this is what I discovered for California. You have 15 Superfund sites, 38 military sites with PFAS contamination, 43 federal sites, 31 airports, 659 fire protection or fire training sites, 8,426 industry sites, 6 wastewater treatment plants seems too low, 177 landfills, 134 fills, and then we have unknown. Okay, and I took this from all the different graphs I just shared with you to put it together. So if you're interested in advocacy of making a change, the Safer States website is really helpful. California has really done some of the most health protective policies across the country on PFAS, but the state also has huge, huge health disparities. And PFAS have been found, as I said before, in the water systems of almost 16 million people. I'm going to take you quickly to the Safer States site, but not spend too much time on it. So hopefully now you're seeing a map of the United States. This Safer States deals with all kinds of toxins. So if you're interested in toxins and contaminants, this is your site for state legislation across the country. When you click on California, it'll tell you they have 17 current policies that are being considered in your legislature and 44 adopted policies. If you click here under Learn More, it will take you down and show you all the bills. So these are the ones that are currently being considered. And you'll see that you have right now a lot of PFAS bills. See all these being considered? And some of the ones that even say toxic chemicals are PFAS bills. And you have a lot of ones that are already adopted policies, which are further down on the list. But I just want to take you to one because I love this website for advocates. So if I click on this one, and this is one we're trying to pass in Vermont, similar, it's about PFAS and cosmetics as additional ingredients, often inert ingredients. So if I click on the bill, this is going to take you to the California legislature. And best of all, it's going to give you the text of the bill. It's going to give you the votes and what happened with all the votes. You can find out who your advocates are and who's voting against the bills that you care about. It'll give you the history. by date, so you can track the bill when it was first introduced and came up, and you can get the status of the bill. So where it is right now in the whole legislative process. Best of all, you can track the bill. So if there's a bill you really care about, you can sign up and get emails and information about it. So this kind of website for advocates who want to send a letter to their legislators or to the committee chairs is absolutely invaluable to help you really be a political advocate in this area, if it's an area that interests you. So let me go back. Okay. I'm not sure. Oh. I'm sorry. I think I'm sharing. I just wanted to show you quickly some of the adopted policies. So where are they? You have a lot. So it'll give you the year it was adopted, and you can go and read the policy itself. So I'm going to go back now here. I'm trying to watch my time pretty carefully. How can you reduce your risk from PFAS? Well, I kind of told you the words to look for. You know, really avoid stain resistant, water resistant, oil and grease resistant, long lasting, etc. Be careful. Be aware of the number of inert ingredients. But two of the best websites are this PFAS free products and this Silent Spring smartphone app. You can download this app when you go to the grocery store. You can scan the barcode of the product, and it will tell you, it will give you information about PFAS and other toxins and chemicals that you should be aware of. I'll take you just to one site quickly. And this is the one from PFAS Central, which is one that's good for finding PFAS-free products. There's rain gear and outdoor gear, and you can see the companies that, you know, are safe to buy from. I'm looking for my coat from this country. Many of these are European countries or Canadian countries. American countries are not caught up yet because they can get away with it, but you'll see that you know, there are countries that these are companies that you would want, you know, to give your business to, so that you can be buying products that are PFAS and toxic free. Cosmetics and personal care products, baby products, furniture, not a lot of companies there, foodware, carpets and rugs, and on and on and on. So it's a wonderful site, and going back to the main page, and there are other sites that you can see. Some of these are better than others, but all of them will help you find products that will help to reduce your risk. So what can you do? What actions can you take? Well, tonight you've educated yourself about PFAS. I've set up Google alerts for PFAS in my state, in my community. If you know how to do that, it's a wonderful way to keep abreast of what's happening. Don't use products that have PFAS. If you have products you love, write to the manufacturers and ask them if their products have PFAS, or to take PFAS out of their product. And one of the easiest things, and I think effective things at a local community level, is to ask your school district or your city to stop buying products with PFAS in them. The economic power of our money not going to companies that use PFAS is really, really important. Governor Whitmer in Michigan issued a state mandate that the state would no longer, offices would no longer buy products, not essential products with PFAS. President Biden has done the same thing. We need more states to do it, but we can also do it at the city and school district and local level. That could be hospitals. It doesn't just have to be the government offices. And we can advocate for legislation to ban PFAS, and we can advocate at the national level as well. The EPA has listening sections, but if you're not familiar with the EPA's strategic roadmap, this is where you can read a lot about what the government is doing. And I have to say, finally, the government is paying attention to PFAS. It's not happening fast enough. It's not banning PFAS yet, but we are definitely moving forward. We just have to keep the pressure going. So here's some resources that I've tapped. This is our website, WILF and Military Poisons website. California has a complete set of pages there with lots of great information about all your military bases and where to get the studies. This is the Environmental Working Group. This is the PFAS project that has the PFAS contamination site tracker. Safer States is your legislative point, and PFAS Central is where you can find information about products. And I really, really want to say, if you want a copy of this as either a PowerPoint or a PDF, don't hesitate to contact me at pfasinfo@wilfus.org. So I know that was a lot of information, and I'll go.
Marguerite, can you put, I think we didn't see the last slide. I mean, that has the information about.
Oh, shoot. I forgot
Yeah,
to shoot.
that's all right.
I did so well at that point. Sorry.
Yes, you did. You did great.
I have to keep going back and forth. I don't know why. Oh, it says sharing is paused. New share. I don't know why it's not coming up.
I think it was the one before this last one.
Yeah, it says
Oh,
it's
really?
paused, but I'm not sure why it's paused. Resume share. Oh,
Oh.
there you
Oh, there, okay.
go. I was trying to track it so that I could see which ones were up because I have to go back and forth so much. But anyway, so I'm so sorry. I'm glad you said something about that. So these are the sites, and I'll leave it up for a moment because I know you're bound to have questions. Or at least I hope you have some.
Oh yeah, there are questions. So
Yeah,
maybe
Yeah, we
I'll-
can start taking questions. We have a few people with their hands up already.
and we also have some on chat. We have a number on chat. So
Yeah,
should I start one with chat to start, and then
yeah, why don't you start one on chat?
All
and
right,
then we'll
all
take the
right.
two people.
hang on
yeah.
a minute? Let me just
Mhm.
all right, this is a question from Arla. Given that we've been consuming all these contaminated items for years, is it too late to stop their impact on us? Is our focus for change for future folks and not for us? Or can we stop, maybe even reverse, whatever effects we may have already been exposed to?
I would say both. But my personal commitment to this is for future generations, my grandchildren. I think they're the ones that are going to be severely affected. Those of us who are older, I think it's probably been within the last 15, 20 years that they started putting PFAS literally in everything. I don't think it was there at quite the level that it is today. But there are things we can do. I mean, if you're in a trade or a field like a firefighter, you should get your blood tested. And some of the latest studies are saying that you should probably, and I'm not sure how to phrase this because the studies say you should donate your blood, you know, and because donating your blood takes, it accumulates in your blood, the PFAS. So if you donate your blood, you're actually cutting the contamination. However, I don't want that blood donated to someone in the hospital. And I've not read anything about that. I think you should throw that blood away. It should be considered a hazardous substance. But it rejuvenates your blood so that it takes the PFAS out, and the new blood that comes in then doesn't have as much. It's that kind of dilution sort of thing, you know, because you're creating new blood and it doesn't have the PFAS contamination in it. Your water, if you have a well, it's not going to be tested in the public system. So I strongly suggest anyone with well get their water tested. And frankly, I don't think it matters if you use a certified lab. If you want to know what PFAS is in your water, I mean, it's still expensive, $79 for some people to use the cheapest test I could find. And getting your water tested will tell you what your exposure is. And even the simplest solution there might just be a PFAS filtering water pitcher, or maybe a simple system to your tap. So that's helpful right there. And then starting to buy products that don't contain PFAS. I mean, all of us need to minimize our consumerism, the takeout containers and things like that, pizza boxes. We finally got or are starting to know that like McDonald's and all the fast food places were using PFAS to wrap up their burgers and put their food in because, they're trying to stop the grease from leaking onto you. So all those conveniences, we need to let go of a lot of those and educate people about them.
Okay,
Yeah.
Betty, you want to call on a hand?
Yeah, we have a question here, Isvara, and please unmute yourself.
Okay.
Thank you. I mentioned that the European products are in better shape. How about the Chinese products? I know the Chinese government is concerned about poisoning their population. And do you know if they have tackled this problem?
That's a good question. I hope maybe I'll have more. I've really focused on the United States. The European Union has done a lot. I believe I've seen some stuff on what China's doing, but I hope to put together more information about what's happening around the world when I do the presentation for Wolf International. I'm curious, if I disappeared, am I still visible?
We're just seeing.
Maybe Marguerite, if you can now remove the
Okay, I will.
PowerPoint, and so
Yeah,
that we
you
can,
can-
there we
yeah,
are. And then we
there.
can, people can either put it on
Oh.
gallery view or speaker view.
Okay.
There you are. You're here. Okay, now we see.
That's better.
Do we have any more questions from people? Oh, Michelle. Okay, Michelle has a question.
Two questions, easily. One is, do organics help? Staying and making sure that the food you eat is organic. Does that help? And the second is, are a lot of these PFAS in plastics? So if we watch our plastic intake, are we watching our PFAS intake?
Yes, those are two very good points. Organic is interesting because Maine, the PFAS problems in Maine really started on an organic milk farmer who discovered that his farm had been contaminated with PFAS and didn't know it because of the biosludge that have been used on the land. So organic isn't always a 100% safe alternative. Another example is right here, we have community gardens next to the railroad tracks, and the railroad tracks are sprayed regularly with herbicides. And they're right next to the railroad tracks. So here's, in our case, we're in a refugee resettlement community, and all the individuals are growing produce right next to where they're spraying. I think they've got to have a lot of awareness of what's going on around you. But I agree 100% about plastic containers. The more we can avoid plastic, the better. The more we can buy bulk, or I saw this in other places, bring a big jar in and refill it, at the grocery store. I've seen that more in other places, like in Canada, than I've seen it here. But that sort of thing makes sense to me. You get the container once and then you bring it back in and refill it. And it could be for anything from shampoo to your dishwashing soap, etc. We put far too many things into plastic containers and all of that. Banning plastic bags was a good start, but we've got a long ways to go.
Yeah, it's very frustrating to some of the large grocery store chains now, where you used to be able to buy produce and put it in a compost bag, and they put them in big plastic containers. So we need to,
Yeah,
work on that. Yeah.
it's so hard. Other
Are there
questions?
any other questions in the chat?
Well, I actually had a question, which was,
Yeah.
A lot of what we just talking about now is your personal people personally making changes in their life, but what kinds of, I think some of us want to know what kinds of actions we can take at a more, at a local and state and national level to try to cut into the government, into the military and industry using PFAS. One thing I wondered is, are there alternatives to them, for the same kinds of, and are those being encouraged to, is there any movement going on around that?
Yes, there's an international group called ChemSec, and ChemSec does some wonderful webinars, but they also have a database site where you can find substitutes for various chemicals, safer substitutes. So ChemSec is a wonderful site for industries if they're not familiar with it. Part of the problem in the US is that, capitalism and industry has the upper hand. I mean, we don't believe in the precautionary principle. It's afterwards we have to prove for health studies that, what they're doing is contaminating us. But ChemSec is a great site. And I'll tell you one of the things that we did here that I thought was important. I still think education on PFAS is crucial because it's complex. And we ended up at the last election cycle emailing every candidate a survey about PFAS, not so that we could pick out the candidates who were best on PFAS or not best on PFAS, but so that we could educate them. And so we sent them a Google survey, but we also sent them information. And then we called them all and we talked to them. And that made one of the biggest differences in the legislative session that we just finished. We had more PFAS bills than we've ever had before and more commitment to PFAS. Legislation is such a slow way to go, but on the other hand, it's probably one of the more effective tools that we have. With industry, pressuring industry can work. There was a big one about taking PFAS out of various products, but companies, especially outdoor gear, but some of those companies just blatantly refused. But getting a boycott or, telling people about that is harder to do. I still think at the local level, the two things, trying to get, school districts and larger public institutions and our city government to stop purchasing, their offices to stop purchasing products with PFAS in it is a great strategy. And we use a sheet of information to write to, like city governments and try and get their, our council people to consider, saying that we're not going to purchase products with PFAS in it. That economic power is huge.
Marguerite, I tend to agree with you. Can you imagine if MSNBC, instead of talking about Trump all the time, they talked about PFAS? If we had documentaries on it, people would react. People are not reacting because they don't know. So it's really the knowledge that is number one important.
Yeah. We made 3 goals for our committee, and the major one is education. The other one, which is related to education, we have fact sheets in multiple languages on PFAS here in our area. We also have done a lot of commentaries and letters to the editor, and with all of our state newspapers. And we write them and try and tag on to something that's happening in the news so that they're relevant. And that's made a big difference. I mean, Marshall McLuhan said the media is the message. You have to have the word out there. People have to read about it and they have to understand what the issue is. So there's a lot of power in letters to the editor, commentaries, programs in the media. And finally, the direct advocacy, in the State House on particular bills, meeting with legislators. I'm going to be meeting with our Attorney General, because a lot of Attorney Generals in states right now are either signing on to national PFAS sorts of letters to the EPA, and or they're doing lawsuits against 3M, DuPont.
Mhm.
You've probably read some of those. So figuring out which people in your state could have an impact and meeting with them and trying to push them forward is a good strategy as well.
Yeah,
I
there was
did-
a lawsuit here in San Francisco, I mean, in the San Francisco Bay Area, about the PFAS in the Bay. And I think I just heard that they actually won that. It's very
Yay.
recent. Mhm, mhm.
That's wonderful. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's certainly a million lawsuits. We've got PCBs here in Vermont in our schools. And half of these schools need major remediation.
Mhm.
Once
Do you
again,
know, do you know if there have been a lot lawsuits by victims? I mean, I just actually heard, I don't know, on the radio or something about AFFS, which
Right.
I guess is,
that's
and it
PFAS.
was like, and it was, and they were saying to call this number if you were worked in the military or you were a firefighter, and you have
Right.
different kinds of illnesses, that they will take on your case. So I don't know how much that's happening, but that seems like that can get industry's attention.
Yes, it can. I mean, 3M has said that they'll stop making PFAS with, I don't know, in another year or so or something, or maybe 2 years. But we still have all this stuff here because it's forever. It's persistent, it's
Yeah.
biodegradable. People talk about remediation, but we're talking about filters and others. So those filters need to be disposed of because they contain PFAS. And so where are we going to dispose of them? There's almost no guidance on that. So if they go to a landfill, they just end up returning. And so
Yeah.
it's a difficult process. We're really not getting rid of PFAS. We're just screening it out. In
Mhm.
fact, they're using hemp to absorb PFAS. So, but it ends up in the plant. So it's still there.
Yeah.
It's
We
not
have-
like gone.
Yeah. We have a question, Barbara. Did you want to ask your question?
Yes, I did. I really wanted to thank you, Marguerite. It's wonderful what you brought to our attention. And I'd like to thank Women's International League for Peace and Freedom for doing this work. And also, I'm wondering if we could have kind of an educational arm that could be not making you do all the educational work, but having people who could learn from you, or a few people who could be doing what you're doing, because it's really great. It's really important.
Yeah, I think the education is important, and demystifying it, knowing where to go to get information. When I started doing this, I was like, well, how do I find out about, how much PFAS we used at the Vermont Air National Guard? That's really what got me interested. That and Pat Elder's work with military bases. And so the military is going to be the hardest to get them to do the right thing. They're not only contaminating their own service members, but they're contaminating communities all over the world where military bases are. Our community, and I fought this recently, had to sign a memorandum of understanding with VTANG's fire department so that they could come out and help fight our fires with PFAS. And it was a hold harmless agreement that said we could not sue them or do anything if they contaminated with PFAS and blah, blah, blah. And it was frightening. And that's happening all over the world, Okinawa and at our bases in foreign countries. One at a a good site, if you want to get a sense of the military exposure component, is called civilian exposure, www.civilianexposure.org. And that's where you probably heard a lot about Camp Lejeune. And I think that website, research site, started around Camp Lejeune and the poisoned water there. Of course, there's PFAS as well, and who knows what else, but they have a number of lawsuits going. So yeah, the lawsuits are happening. Class action lawsuits, there's some things to be concerned about with some of those because there's a time limit. So that's the irony. It takes so long for these chemicals to build up in your body, till they, eventually kill you or ruin your health. But there's a time limit for how long you have to prove it. If you're interested in films, one of the films, and a film festival is a good strategy for educating people. We showed the film No Defense by Sarah Gammon. And it's called No Defense, the Military's War on Water. And if you go to our website under media, you'll find some great films. And showing those films was a wonderful way to do it. We got the Vermont International Film Festival site here to co-sponsor with us. And we showed the movie and got the rights to show the movie in a 5-state region and attracted a lot of people and then got some great speakers from it. And that was a focus on the military, but there's also, the Mark Ruffalo film. Yeah, that's right. Dark Waters, which was about PFAS. It's done more as a Hollywood drama. The Devil You Know is another one. And, I think a film festival is a palatable strategy for a lot of people to learn about PFAS.
Right.
Yeah. Sandy? You like
Yeah,
to-
yeah,
Getting close to
really.
the end. Thank you so much, though, Marguerite, also.
It was just,
I
this is, go ahead.
can see some projects for us here in San Francisco, to be honest. Okay.
Yeah, this
Sandy?
is wonderful. we really appreciate your time and obviously all the research and work you have done for 4 years to, this is obviously an incredibly complex issue. It hits on so many, it touches on so many people in so many ways that it's, it's a little overwhelming and scary, but I do think that, you still have to kind of look at it and see how, number one, how you can protect yourself and your family. And then number two, how you can try to, as Arla said, work for both future generations and then but also then for at least for this generation too, to at least make take some steps to, and you've suggested some ways we can do that. So really appreciate it. And we want to just also then mention that this is, yes, it's really wonderful. And we want to mention that if most of the people that are on the call here are WILF members, but if not, that you can go to, for the international, it's wilpf.org, WILPF.org. For the national organization, which has a lot of this information that Marguerite was talking about, is wilpfus.org. And then if you want to find out what our local branches are doing, the San Francisco and East Bay branch, you can go to either wilpfeastbay.org or wilpfsf.org. So there's all those WILP sites to see. I just have to say, I was in chat, I was trying to say something was was used for PFAS, and it kept changing it to PEA. It's just like, no, you don't mean PFA. So if you see in the chat,
Yeah.
P's, I meant PFA. So anyway, thank you so much. And I also thank everyone. I know this was it's a lot of information in a short amount of time, and I appreciate everybody hanging in there and asking great questions. And I hope people have some ideas of ways they can go from here. So thank you. And it's been a great evening.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you,
you so
everyone.
much.
All right.
Great.
Good night,
Thank you.
everybody.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye-bye.